Did you know that President Oaks also has his own snatch from the jaws of death story? Are you guys
Yes,
familiar with this story?
except that his story is so good that he actually snatched the hoodlum who was mugging him
Yeah.
from the jaws of death, because he
Yeah.
didn't save himself. He saved that man because he
Yep.
knew that his kung fu is so strong and his hands are registered as deadly weapons with the
Yep.
police department that if Elder Oaks had made a move on him, it would have been the last thing that happened to this kid.
Yep, and
on
that's
this
the
life.
story. And he's been telling it, I think, since the 90s, everybody said. A more recent version here is retold by Elder Bednar, right? And this is a graphic from Jasmine, but it is the story of then Elder Oaks. He and his wife were driving a sister home from a church meeting in, South Chicago.
The south
right?
side of Chicago. They call it the baddest part of town for a reason, Elder Oaks.
Leroy Brown did it. Yeah, exactly. And so after he dropped her off, and he walked her to the door. What a gentleman. And his wife was sitting in the car. He turned to walk back to the car, and suddenly there's a gun and a young man, and the gun is pointed right to his stomach, right? Give me your wallet. And he shows him his wallet, and it's empty. I don't know why it would be empty. He was an apostle. But anyway, his wallet was empty. And then the kid says, give me your car keys. And he looks at his wife inside the car and says, I won't, and tells her, don't unlock the door, right?
Because there's no way that bullet would go through the glass.
Yeah, I kind of thought,
door glass.
I kind of feel like if I were in that scenario, I would want my partner to say, whatever, we're getting out of the car, we're going to go. You know what I mean? Nothing is more important than human life. You just kind of go.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so the gun's pointed to his stomach, and the story goes that he felt it kind of slip, or the gunman kind of lose focus for a minute.
Mm.
And now Elder Oaks knew that he had military training that would allow him to take this, to absolutely turn the tables and probably really hurt or kill this young man.
No, he knew.
Yeah.
He knew by the power of the Holy Ghost that if he
Yeah.
made the move on this young hoodlum, that he would get that gun from him, turn it around, and shoot it into this hoodlum's chest and kill him. And he didn't want that innocent, that quasi-innocent, that guilty blood on his hands for the rest of his life.
So the Holy Ghost stopped him
That's
from
how
using
holy President Oaks is.
That's right. Elite military training. I have to laugh because my co-host Landon was in the military. He's like, what military training did he have? So he starts looking it up. He's like, oh, I was in the National Guard. I mean, maybe,
weekend warrior.
He was in the National Guard. So but the whole point was that he basically, because he followed the Spirit, he did not kill someone else. And so no blood is on his hands.
He weaned it out by following the Holy Ghost.
That's exactly right. So, but I thought that's very interesting. The rest of Jasmine's video was about all the times he was spared from death. President Oaks, he was almost stillborn. He was deathly ill. He, had all these different problems. It basically sounds like anybody's childhood in the 30s, but apparently he was spared and saved for greater things. And I started thinking a lot of church leaders have these incredible origin stories. You have to have one, right? You have to be Harry Potter. You have to be Superman. You have to be larger than life. But I
want this hoodlum to join the church, hear about this, and come forward with what really happened.
That is always interesting when that happens, because they always make stories a little bigger than they are. I have a story about that, since now I have an extra 2 minutes. So I have a family member who was attending a relief society in another state, not her own state. She was just on vacation. And the woman teaching Relief Society pulled up an Ensign article about, I can't remember which apostle it was, but he'd been on an airplane flight, and there was a mother with a young child who had epilepsy, seizures, and a blessing was given, and the baby was healed. And that was in the Ensign article. But then the teacher said, and that baby is a stake president now today, right? Well, my family member recognized the story because it was her own nephew. And he wasn't a stake president. He was actually in juvie, at least then. He's fine now. But the idea that you have to embellish. And so she went up to the teacher afterwards. I cannot imagine being that teacher. Can you imagine embellishing a random story in the Ensign and then having somebody come up to you afterwards and say, that's my nephew. And no, that wasn't really, how it ended. So I think we just all have this sense that you want something to be more important maybe than it was, or find meaning. So I don't know. We'll have to see if there are these stories going forward, about this miraculous event, if this gets more play.
there are these things that seem miraculous, and
Yep.
therefore we want them to be miraculous. So we embellish them so that they are more miraculous than they were. And
Yep.
then the story gets told, and you add your own embellishment to make it even more miraculous.
Yep.
Now he's the stake president. So it gets handed on down to posterity.
Yep, that's exactly how it happens. And I think, President Nelson was a great example of that. And all of us, looked at those two stories, the incident at Mozambique. We could track that through the Deseret News itself, how it blew up and changed. And then, the airplane. But if you still Google it, you will still get the AI answer. He survived a fiery plane crash. And, it's still there. So
Don't forget the lady in the hat.
Oh, and the lady in the red hat.
That one was so bad, they actually had to take the entire story out of the book.
Yep. No, and Holland's story about the two brothers running into each other. I think you're realizing that the era of Paul H. Dunn is over. You cannot tell something without being fact checked. So it's interesting. Anyway, I think that takes us, oh my gosh, to the very end. Unless you guys have any more comments on any more stories, we'll go over a few things coming up because there's some pretty amazing stuff happening this week. It's a spooky week.
It is. And not to speak ill of the dead, but when I was listening to 4 recent discoveries, one of them had to do with President Nelson and the somewhat contradictory accounts of the vision he had, whereby he knew that his son was to be named Russell Marion Nelson Jr. That was on there too. It's amazing. I mean, it's been 9 years, but honestly, I think that I forget more than half of the stuff I've said.
Yeah, well, but it's kind of like resurrecting the gnat. There has to be some meaning. There has to be something important. Or the miracle of the microphone that we just heard with, was that Elder Stevenson? That would be funny if it was. I can't remember, where he was heard in the back of the room at the MTC when I think it might have been, when the sound system went out, Yeah. So there are all these little things that you can spin into a very positive, faith affirming thing. But the rest of us, of course, we don't. So